phone addiction is getting so bad that watching a movie feels productive. Like, I'll scroll on my phone for 3 hours. I'll go through TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is, and I'll feel super bad about it. I'll feel fried and just burnt out. And then I'll decide, you know what? I want to sit down, relax, and watch a 3-hour movie. And for some reason, it feels way more productive than being on your phone. It's like your brain processes that small screen is bad, big screen good.
For Mamma Mia, I'm your host, Ashani Dante. Welcome to But Are You Happy? The show for anyone whose idea of relaxation is watching true crime with a weighted blanket.
And I'm Dr Anastasia Hronis, a clinical psychologist passionate about happiness and mental health. Are you someone who's never been able to put their phone down?
Yep, I'm definitely guilty of that one.
We can all be, but there comes a point where being on our phone too much can really negatively impact our mental health and how we spend our time. So we're going to unpack that today.
Let's get into it. Okay, I'm not going to lie. I did have a little giggle to myself as we were preparing for this episode because the phone is fucking up our lives. And yeah, it's laughable because it's so relatable. Why is it fucking up our lives, Anastasia?
Yeah. Well, let me jump in right off the start and say it's not the phone. It's what's on the phone and what we're doing on our phones, right? Because if we think back to the days of the quote unquote dumb phone, as they call it now, right? The Nokia flip phone or whatever it was. I remember I had a phone back in the day and what did I do on it? I played Snake.
Yes.
I got really good at Snake.
What a throwback. That is so true.
Yep. Snake, that like one game, black and white, no color, and a lot of buttons you had to press. And then you'd text a friend and you had to type out every letter.
Oh my gosh. It is so true that you say that. I fully forgot that we did that.
Yeah. And while we might have used phones a lot back then, we weren't like addicted to them in the same way that we are now. I certainly didn't have kind of these urges to be like, oh my God, I can't wait to like pick up my phone and play the next game of Snake, right? It just wasn't that exciting or enticing. Or, sending a text, it took longer. So, part of the thing that makes something have more addictive potential is how fast we can do it, right? So nowadays we can scroll super fast through TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, all these things. If I make an analogy, it's like poker machines, right? Very similarly, we can play pokies really fast. And that's why pokies are more addictive than something like scratchies or lotto tickets because we have more of a period of having to wait than playing pokies.
Wow.
And there's actually limits. I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but there's actually limits as to how fast pokies can spin. I think it's like 2.4 seconds per spin. Wow. But the reason they have that in place is because they know the faster you can do something, the more addictive it can be. So the reason I say this is because when we had to type out that text, it was slow, it was effortful, it took longer, it was a bit more hard work, which means it's got less of a potential to be addictive.
Yeah, it's so interesting you talk it out like that because I fully forgot that that's how I used to text back in the days. And that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. I remember I could like type out my name like super fast with my eyes closed without having to look at like which numbers I had to press.
Like, look at me.
And that was like a win for the day.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. But it's interesting because it does just go to show, I like to kind of name it as we do live in this microwave culture where we thrive off getting things quick and fast. And I feel like that's exactly what's happening with our phones as well.
Absolutely.
So what makes our phones, or as you were saying, what's on it, what makes it so addictive? Like, why can we not put it down?
So there's a few key features. So I already spoke to that speed element, right? The faster we can do something, the more addictive potential it has.
Yeah.
But there's something else called intermittent reinforcement schedules, which is just basically
so fancy.
A fancy way of saying the brain likes things that are rewarding and exciting, right? So when we go and scroll social media, we see a video and we find it funny and the brain likes that, right? This is where dopamine comes into it. Dopamine pathways are activated. But what the brain likes more than just something exciting is random excitement, right? So when I don't know when the exciting thing is going to happen, it makes my brain lock in even more and makes it more exciting and addictive. So again, I'm going to make a link to poker machines. People know that a win is possible when you play a poker machine because either they've won before or they've seen someone else win or they just know it's a possibility. So the fact that those wins are random, we don't know when it's going to happen, but we know there's the potential for it, makes it more exciting. So this is intermittent, which means every so often, not on a regular, intermittent reinforcement, reward, schedules. The rewards are on a random schedule. And this is how social media platforms have been developed to exist. Because the companies know that if every single video you saw was like that bang on, this is so great, I love this, it would actually be less exciting to the brain than if every third or fourth video you saw was that really funny or exciting video.
Wow. That's actually, I mean, it's amazing to see that perspective, but also quite confronting because I'm literally thinking about social media because I definitely am addicted to social media and I can feel, like you talk about dopamine, I literally can feel it go off in my brain being like, ooh, new follow, new like, new comment. Who's this person? I don't know who this person is. And it's just, I notice myself doing it, but I actually can't get out of it. And I know like we'll talk about that later, but it does just, it's so conflicting, right? Because I know social media is this false reality, you know, it's a curated lifestyle, but I do subconsciously and consciously, I do kind of give into it being like, and it sounds so superficial in a way, but it's like, oh, if I get this amount of followers, then I'm going to be successful. Or if I get this many likes, that means I'm going to feel loved.
I think what you're saying speaks to what a lot of people experience, which is this internal conflict. The part of me that goes, I know this isn't real. I know this maybe isn't as important. I know it's addictive. I know I shouldn't look at my phone that much. I shouldn't, look at social media that much. And yet we do.
Yeah.
And it's because dopamine and these chemical neural pathways are being activated on a level that is beneath conscious awareness. We actually don't, I almost hate to say this, but we don't have as much control as we like to think we do. I'm really I've got opinions about this because I think where we're at currently with social media is that a lot of onus has been placed on the individual to manage and monitor and stop their use, right? If you're addicted to social media, you should put all these barriers in place. Yes, I'm not anti that, but where's the bigger conversation about regulation and pressure on social media companies to not create apps and platforms that are designed to be addictive? It's no secret that we exist in this attention economy. We know that these companies profit the more time we spend on certain apps, and so they are being designed for us to be on there for as long as possible.
It's so interesting you talk about the attention economy. Like, I think that's just such a, I think that's so symbolic of the times we're living in, because I think about social media back in the days I was in high school, and I was probably on the edge of MySpace and Bebo. This is
Bebo. Oh God, I remember Bebo.
These are for all the millennials out there that get this. But I remember it wasn't as addictive too, because there wasn't that advertisement aspect to it as well. So it's just interesting how much it's changed, and drastically.
It was literally following your friends, and friends would post, what they had for dinner that night. And on a scale of what's exciting, what some person is having somewhere with friends that I don't know is not actually that exciting to me.
Yeah.
Also, if you think back to the days of, say, Facebook used to have an end to the home screen, right? We would actually scroll, because we have the infinite scroll now. Facebook never used to have the infinite scroll.
Gosh, I didn't know this.
It's a new thing. You used to scroll. You'd get to the end of your news feed, and it would either say, you're all caught up, as in you've seen everything there is to see on this home feed, or it would say, click to see more. And so that button, the click to see more, was an opportunity for your brain that was stuck in this kind of scroll, for the prefrontal cortex to come back online to go, hang on, do I actually want to keep scrolling through and seeing what food people are eating for dinner or where they've checked into, or do I want to go and do something else?
Wow.
We don't have that button anymore because it has been identified as a circuit breaker. It actually takes people away from the scroll. And of course, companies don't want that. They want you to be on there for as long as possible. So these really kind of small, seemingly small tweaks have such a huge impact on how much time we spend on these apps.
So how big is the negative impact on our mental and physical health?
It's big. And I say this not to discredit the positive impacts that social media, phones, tech can have, but if we look at the data about excessive phone use and social media use, because I think really here, when we're talking about phones, we're talking about specific apps, right? I'm not spending hours a day on Google Maps or on the weather app. Yeah, you know, like I'm not hooked on that. I'm hooked on—
Unless you're traveling a lot and need the weather.
And in which case it's really functional and useful, right? Yeah. But so I guess we differentiate here between apps and technology that are designed to be tools that are really useful versus apps and tech that are designed to be entertainment. So when we look at people spending excessive amounts of times on these apps, we see that there are higher rates of depression, loneliness, anxiety. Physically, people report disruptions to their sleep, especially if people are scrolling before bed, which they often do in the bed and before bed. So it really can have quite a negative impact on our mental health in so many ways.
It's a little bit of a paradox in a way, right, when it comes to loneliness and using our phones, because it's like we think using our phones will make us less alone, because you're right, it does serve a function. It helps us to connect with people, especially in the different time zones, or, you know, it is a way to communicate. But is it actually helping?
I think it's exactly what you said, right? If we're using it in a way that is useful, as the tool it's designed to be, if we're talking to friends who live overseas and sort of can connect, etc., then wonderful, great. What a brilliant, wonderful use of tech and social media and phones. But if we are on our phones and we find ourselves replacing online connections with in real life connections, that's not a great thing. If we find ourselves engaging in excessive social comparison because we are now suddenly exposed to so many more people online, that's not great. And again, social comparison is a natural thing.
Totally.
It's not a downfalling of any individual person if they fall into this sort of social comparison when it comes to what we consume online. It's really natural and normal, but it's been amplified because we have access to so much and so many people nowadays in a way that's very curated online.
So what about algorithms and what these apps, like what are they actually feeding us?
Well, we would like to think that these apps are feeding us content that are really sort of personalized to us, right? These apps have a lot of data on who we are and what kinds of content we want to consume. So yes, on the one hand, these apps will feed us content that we find enjoyable. For example, last night, I love looking at like cooking videos on Instagram. So I was looking at cooking videos, and the next thing I know, my like explore page was just like full of cooking videos. And I was like, oh, there's a lot of cooking videos, but like, you know, nice. Okay, I like looking at this stuff. So it gives us what we like and what we enjoy. But there's a couple of other things it gives us that is not so helpful or so good for us. Second is it feeds the echo chamber. So if I have particular political beliefs or world views that may or may not be sort of healthy and helpful, it will feed me content that pushes and pursues particular beliefs. Now, what we also know about online content is that the more extreme it is, the more viral it goes, right? So I'm less likely to receive videos that provide a very moderate view on certain social issues. I'm more likely to be fed videos that provide a somewhat extreme perspective because they're the ones that get a lot of engagement. And this is where we kind of move into the space of rage content. We know that certain social media platforms will actually push rage content. So this is content that makes us feel something. It makes us angry. It makes us annoyed. It makes us want to write the comment, send it to a friend, even if we don't agree with it. So we end up in this space where we are engaging with and somewhat perpetuating the spread of content that we might not believe in, that we don't agree with, but because it's activated some degree of emotion and rage within us, the spread it has becomes even bigger.
And it's interesting too, just kind of touching on that, because I think there's this desire, and I'm coming from a content creator space as well, but there's always this desire for content creators or people that have an online presence to go viral, right? So it's like, what is that telling these people, being like, oh, I need to be more angry and, kind of shape myself to feed these algorithms. But then it's like we're losing touch of our own authenticity as well.
Yes, yes. And, I see videos where people have very strong, one-sided opinions on things, and those go viral as opposed to the people who might have more kind of moderate, balanced perspectives on things or want to kind of explore two sides. Those are not as engaging. They're not as quick. They're not as snappy. So they get often less exposure than the videos that are lean on one end of a spectrum.
Yeah.
I think this is also where we're talking about like algorithms and what they feed us. This is where we can also talk about the negative use of social media to kind of spread misinformation. So when we think about misinformation, we're thinking about content that is actually not factual, and that might not necessarily be with the intention to not be factual, but just by nature of the kind of spread or whoever's created it, it's not actually factual, versus disinformation, which is designed to be not factual but push a particular agenda. But with the degree of content that we consume these days, so the quantity, but also how fast we consume it, it's really hard to fact check everything. I know I've certainly come across videos in my feed where I'm looking at it and I'm like, is that actually true? I don't know if it is. It sounds like it might not be. But also, I'm in some sort of scrolling pattern now. I can't be bothered checking. And, I'm just going to sort of take that with a grain of salt. But we're getting so much information. We don't know what's true and what's not these days.
So have you seen this in the clinic in terms of phone addictions?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not something that we have a clear definition around, phone addiction, but I would say it is absolutely something I'm seeing more and more in the clinic, both adults and kids. We have a lot of parents and families who are coming to the clinic being like, my, child, my teenager is hooked on phones, on screens, on computers, whatever kind of screens it might be, hooked on them. And it's impacting all facets of their life. They're not getting out and about. They're not doing the sports that they once enjoyed. They're not connecting with their friends in real life. They're sometimes not wanting to go to school as a result of it. So we're absolutely seeing more of this in the clinic. And I think this kind of speaks to the upcoming social media ban as well for in December. I think it's the 10th of December.
Yeah.
Under 16s not going to be allowed to use social media in Australia. I mean, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
But I think one of the reasons it's important to kind of consider youth and teens in this space is because the brain in those teenage years is very plastic. It's very changeable. It's very susceptible to the information we feed it. Yeah. And we know that the brain at that age also has a very active limbic system, which means it's highly emotional and pretty impulsive. But the prefrontal cortex, the part that helps us regulate ourselves and make good, responsible decisions, is not very well developed. So we're giving teens and kids access to these tools where they have full ability to access all corners of the internet, and the internet has some dark and scary places on it. But, that's hard for adults to manage sometimes, let alone kids whose brains are not yet fully developed. So I don't know that a social media ban is the answer to all our problems, but I think it's a step in the right direction to bring awareness to the fact that we need to do something to protect our kids.
It's so true. And it's interesting because I saw a bunch of our facilitators from Flourish recently, and I actually was asking them about the conversations that you're having with teen girls around the social media ban. And it's interesting because they're going to find a way to get around it. And that's, again, another whole episode. But the second one is actually they know that social media is addictive, and they know, like, they're not victims to it. Teenage girls, they're not victims to it. It's more around they need help with navigating the phone addiction because they're aware of it too, as much as I'm aware that I'm really addicted to it. They just need strategies. And I think that's where the conversations need to be had.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, I'm going to come back to the algorithm for a moment. The algorithm knows exactly who we are. The algorithm knows that I'm, a 30-something-year-old psychologist who likes to consume cooking videos.
Your phone's picking up on this, don't worry.
And it feeds me sort of mental health information from other, creators who have some really sort of sound advice to share. But I was recently working with a young person, and when I say young, I mean preteen, and they showed me their feed. And their feed had a lot of really cool, exciting, interesting vapes.
Interesting.
And I then went on my app to try and find similar videos. But because the algorithm knows who I am, it gave me videos about people talking about how bad vapes are for you, which is the sort of content that I would typically consume. And I was like, no, I want to find those cool vape videos because I want to understand, better what kids are seeing. And it was very hard. I didn't actually find it. I gave up in the end.
Really?
But I couldn't find those cool marketing vape videos that kids are being fed. And I come back to the algorithm. The algorithm knows that that's a young child. So I find that really scary.
I think the reality is the content on our phones is not going anywhere, and it's around how do we learn to work with it without compromising our mental health and our physical health. And it's interesting because we are in changing times, and it's in conversations like this, right, that we can build our self-awareness but also start to create healthier habits.
Absolutely.
So Anastasia, how do we stop our phones from fucking up our lives?
The $1 million billion question.
Yep, quite literally.
The question everyone is asking at the minute. And I'm going to give some suggestions and some strategies, but I want to preface this by saying hold compassion for yourself when trying to make these changes because, as we've said, certain apps are designed to keep us on there for as long as possible. They activate pathways in the brain that are below our conscious awareness. And so it is really hard to make some of these changes for ourselves. So let's just keep that in mind and keep that in perspective. I'm going to suggest a twofold approach to trying to make some changes for ourselves. One is around practically limiting our screen use. And the other is around increasing more values-aligned behaviors and being able to do both of these simultaneously. So if we first talk about limiting screen use, this is where the real practical stuff comes into it. So things like limiting access to certain apps. So this might mean that at certain points in the week or certain points in the day, you actually uninstall apps from your phone. It might mean that you put your phone on flight mode. This is something I do, or a do not disturb if I don't want to be interrupted with notifications. It might mean that you download something called the Dumb Phone. So there's an actual app. I met Michael, the guy who designed this app recently. So he created an app that sort of turns your phone into a dumb phone. And if you see it, it looks much less exciting than our typical phones. It might be that you decide to change your phone to Grayscale. This is a really quick and easy and effective one. If anyone just wants a quick tip for trying to make some changes fast, put your phone on Grayscale. Scroll TikTok or Instagram and see how much less exciting the phone looks when you're looking at it in black and white and grey as opposed to in colour. Colour is quite exciting for the brain, so we're taking some of that excitement away. So looking at these practical strategies, if you happen to be listening and you're a parent and you want guidance around managing kid and teen phone usage, the eSafety website have some really, really great resources around family tech agreements. And this is where the whole family can come together and agree on tech use in the home. Do we maybe have spaces in the home where we agree that we're not going to have phones, for example, the dinner table or in bed? So having these shared family agreements can be really useful.
I really love that. And that's so good that the eSafety website has that. We'll have to put a link into the show notes. But it's interesting you talk about no phones in the bedroom because I'm going to say Yo and I, we don't do this anymore. But when we were first married and we moved into our new apartment, it was very exciting. We didn't have phones in the bedroom. Like it was like these non-negotiable rules that we both followed. We abided to the rules and it was so good because I was in my room. I would just be journaling and it was like a really nice sacred space. But now I say that's what we used to do because now I don't do that. But when it worked, it actually was really effective. Yeah. And I think, doesn't it take like 30 days to build a habit anyways or something like that? So I guess this is kind of the layer of compassion, to bring compassion to all of this.
Exactly. And recognizing that when we do put these blocks in place, we are going to have urges to go back to, the app or to the phone. I know I've had times where I've uninstalled or deactivated sort of accounts of social media, and I will literally open my phone and press exactly where the icon would be automatically without thinking. And it's not until it opens up and it's like, you've logged out or you've deactivated this account temporarily, that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing that thing where I'm not looking at social media, but it's an automatic habit and reaction to open and press the icon.
It's so true. It's interesting. Like, I know you mentioned about the app that your friend Michael has. So I've been using another app called Opal. So that's another social media time restriction one, and it worked really well. I have to admit, I have been ignoring the limit and I have been exceeding. And it's an interesting one because I'm sure there's people tuning in that have tried these strategies and it's still not working. And I'm keen to get your lens on, like, how do we bring compassion to this? Because I so desperately would like to not be addicted to my phone.
Yeah. It's remembering that this is something that is designed to keep you on there. I mean, and it's not just social media we're talking about. I mean, there was a very famous quote that came out from a streaming service, a popular streaming service a few years back, where it said, we're not competing with other streaming services, we're competing with sleep.
What?
Yeah. So I think that really just clearly highlights the message of, we're doing all this work trying to be like, let me find another app to help me manage my use, and let me put my phone in one of those boxes where I can't, access it, and let me put limits, and let me download eSafety. We're doing all these things because they're designed to keep us on there for as long as possible. And so I think the compassion comes in knowing that.
So how about values-aligned behaviors? You were speaking to that a little bit before.
Yes. So while we try to reduce our screen use, that's not going to be enough, because what will typically happen if that's all we try to do, we'll do that successfully for 1 week, 2 weeks, however long.
Guilty.
And then and then at some point we'll just go back to doing what we were doing before, right? Because it's hard work. We're kind of like white knuckling it the whole time. It's difficult. So what we have to do at the same time is increase other behaviors, right? We're going to spend less time on a screen. It means we're going to have more time for other stuff. So how are we going to fill that time? We can just fill it in random ways. But what I recommend is we fill it in ways that are values aligned. So we've talked about values before, but this is where it comes back to being able to reflect on what are those things that are most important to me, and being able to substitute that time with actions and behaviors that align with those values that I hold. If I hold the value of creativity, what can I do during that time that is creative? If I hold the value of adventure, what can I do that's adventurous instead of, spending a Sunday afternoon scrolling on my phone? I go out and do some new activity. Doing things that align with our values creates a stronger buffer for us to then sort of resist the urge to want to go back on our screens in the way that we previously did.
I can imagine as well, readjusting, there can be a bit of resistance to that too, because I definitely can feel that tendency to want to just jump back on my phone. But then it's like, okay, Shani, what are the activities you can do? I've got some homework to do. We've reached that time in our episode where we answer a question or dilemma from one of you, our But Are You Happy listeners. Anastasia, this one comes from Mel.
Lately, I've noticed this weird compulsion. I'll be having a normal day, maybe even a good one, and suddenly I'm deep in some article about climate collapse or doom scrolling through headlines about everything going wrong in the world. And I know it's not good for me. I can feel my chest tighten, my mood dip, my brain just goes into panic mode, but I keep doing it over and over again. Like, some part of me thinks staying constantly informed, even overwhelmed, is more responsible than stepping back. But is it? At what point does this awareness just turn into anxiety?
Ooh, this is such a great question. I'm really glad this one came through, because we've talked about the addictive nature of apps. We've talked about social comparison, but we haven't talked too much in this episode about sort of doom scrolling and the consumption of a lot of news content.
Yeah.
And so, Mel, I want to start off by validating your experience by actually sharing some statistics with you. So this came out from the 2025 Digital News Report, which tells us that an increasing amount of people are actually going to social media as their main form of news consumption.
So true.
So people are actually shifting away from traditional news outlets to consume news. And apparently it's 1 in 4 that say social media is their main source of where they get their news from. In addition to this, there's also reports that say since about 2016, people are reporting that they are wanting to consume news less. And I think this speaks to the kind of rise of social media and the way in which we have actually been fed news. And I use the word fed very deliberately because we're not always choosing to consume some of this news online and through our social media. It is just given to us and we feel like we really don't have a choice in what we see sometimes. So I say this to validate that people are getting a lot of their news online, but people are not always necessarily choosing that. We end up scrolling and seeing all these awful stories about wars, about political things that are happening, about climate change, financial crises, all these things. And it can be very overwhelming. Historically, we haven't had so much access to news. This is a new thing. So if you find yourself stuck doom scrolling news and some of that negative content that we can see with news, I would encourage you to ask yourself the question, am I doom scrolling for reassurance, for distraction, or for control? Because we might find that there is a part of reading through and looking through and watching videos that are all about climate change that provides us something, some sort of reassurance that someone's doing something, some sort of sense of control that I feel like, well, now that I have the information, I can do something, or it might feel like a distraction from other things in our life. But really kind of reflect on the question of why am I doing this? Why am I going deep down this rabbit hole? And if you can answer that question for yourself, it might help you to be able to kind of put the pause button in place and step away from the phone for a period of time.
Anastasia, can you reiterate on the main takeaways from today's episode?
I will do my best. First of all, screen time and social media, especially excessive screen time, can be detrimental for our mental health. Secondly, these apps are designed to be addictive. So when you are trying to make changes, hold compassion for yourself. And third, if you do find yourself stuck scrolling excessively, I encourage you to take a 2-prong approach where you try and limit screen time while also increasing values-aligned behaviors.